So thank you for joining this lesson. This is going to be doing, as I said, the big 16 mark you'll find at the end of the AQA exam on conflict and tension. And we're going to look at why the Allies won the war. We're going to have a bit of a recap of our knowledge, first of all. So if you've got my revision guide, then do look through the pages of why the Allies won the war. And then we'll plan an answer, and we're going to practice writing a 16 mark grade 9 answer. But firstly, let's have a little quiz and see how well you know your facts about why the Allies won the war. So here is the question we're going to look at. So the Allies won the war due to the impact of the naval blockade on the German home front. So was it the German home front losing, or were there other factors? So how far do you go with this statement? So we've looked at this in other this type of question in other videos, and we've looked at success criteria, and we know we need the 3 Peel paragraphs and a conclusion to be successful. So let's plan our 3 paragraphs now. So we've got our naval blockade. So what do you think are going to be 2 other factors? These could be factors of your choice. Think about the different sections of the page. Think about some of the hints in the quiz there. What would be some of the other factors we could argue? So fill in other factors, or have a think about them, and I'll show you potentially the factors you could use. Have a think now. Okay, ready? Had a think? Got your ideas? So here's what I think. We could talk about the strength and tactics of the Allies, new technology, the new tactics, the USA joining, those type of ideas. We could talk about the failure of the Ludendorff offensive, how it's a gamble too far and it sort of ruined the German army. Okay, so now time for you to plan. So have a think about a point, a bit of evidence, an explanation, and a wider link you could do for each of these. Remember, your wider link could be a good thing or a bad thing. If you're saying it's very important, you need to give a link to another important aspect. If you think it's not a good thing, you might need to give a negative of it or compare to the fact that's more important to evaluate it. Okay, so a bit of planning time. A few minutes, jot your ideas down now. Okay, you ready? You paused me, had a go. So here we are. Here's what I've written down for the first one. So I've talked about, obviously, the German home front led to a naval blockade, led to starvation of the home front. We could talk about the turnip winter, the starvation deaths. It led to protests and revolution at home, and it's led to soldiers surrendering more easily on the front line. Okay, so we've got all those things we could talk about in our answer. Paragraph 2. Strength and tactics of the Allies. We could talk about more soldiers and better new technology than the Central Powers had. Evidence, USA joining. Talk about how they were increasing supplies of weapons. We could talk about how the Americans joining helped defeat the Spring Offensive and take Hindenburg Line. We could talk about tanks, helped with the breakthrough in battles at Cambrai and Amiens, and obviously were leading breakthroughs by the end of the war into more mobile warfare. Failure Ludendorff offensive, we could talk about used up the last resources and the best fighting men. Germany, after that, realised they were sort of failing. The amount of casualties, 500,000 casualties over the whole offensive, 1 million shells used on the first day. So that's a lot of their supplies used up. The army was severely weakened, and the 8th of August counterattack was the black day of the German army. So, of course, also the Ludendorff offensive led to a reorganisation of the Allied army, and they were more effective under their new organisation under Foch of the French army. Okay, and this led to a successful counterattack. So let's have a look then at the first paragraph. So we're going to go through this one together, and we can work together through it. So we're going to make our point. We're going to give our evidence. We're going to explain. We're going to make a link to a wider idea. So what do you think? Is the naval blockade partly important, very important? How much do you think it's important? And can you think about a reason why? Remember, in our plan, we talked about starvation on the home front. You could obviously use that opening point. Okay, over to you. Write your opening point now, and I'll show you an example in a sec. Okay, you've paused me, you've written your example. So here we go. So naval blockade was a very important cause of the Allies winning the war because it led to the defeat of the German home front. Okay, so in an all-out total war, the defeat of the home front is pretty important. So, for example, so how do we back up that the home front was badly impacted? So give some of those examples we talked about in our plan. Over to you, write the examples. Okay, so here we are. Here's the examples. So, for example, it led to significant amounts of starvation in Germany with the turnip winter and over 400,000 deaths by starvation. You could connect in the Spanish flu, if you like, which started to hit towards the end of the war also, and lack of medicines. Okay, explain. This meant the blockade helped the Allies win the war because. So how does that impact the war? Okay, so now think about rebellions at home, actions of the German home front and government to explain why. Okay, over to you. Write your idea. Okay, so obviously it meant the blockade helped win the war because the people within Germany started to protest against the war and wanted it to come to an end. In 1917, there were protests against starvation and the war by tens of thousands of people. However, during 1918, the people were tired of the lack of food, the high inflation, and the deaths from starvation and disease. From October to 25th, 1918, strikes and demonstrations took place, which led to the Kaiser abdicating and the new government surrendering on 11th November 1918. Okay, so it all happened on the home front. This is quite a big argument because the German army was still in France at this time. It wasn't even retreating back into Germany. So the home front must be fairly significant. So furthermore, can we give another explanation? Maybe the idea I just gave about the army could be useful. We could talk about another aspect of this, maybe the effectiveness of the naval blockade, that sort of thing. Okay, so what's be another idea? Over to you. Where you go? Try and explain it even more. All right, so here's what I put, but obviously you might have a different answer. And, as long as it's got lots of facts, it's convincing like I did in my answer there, that's the main thing. So furthermore, many of the new recruits in the German army did not have the will to fight due to the lack of food and supplies. New soldiers did not have the same discipline and surrendered more easily, as shown by the swift victories in the Second Battle of Somme and the Fifth Battle of Ypres. The seizing of the Nuremberg line was very easy. They feared it would be very challenging, but it wasn't. So let's go on to the other paragraphs then. So in this case, I'm not going to go through it in detail with you. I'll give you need to pause me, spend 5 or 6 minutes writing a paragraph, then come back to the example answer. Okay, so give this one a go. You've got the plan there in front of you. Give this one a go. Try and practice writing out your convincing argument. Okay, so here's an example for you to assess from. So in this case, we're talking about the strength of the Allies was obviously important. I've put that it's the most important in my opinion. It doesn't matter if you've got a different opinion. It's all about the convincing argument. It's not about which is definitely correct or not correct. That's not the case in history. It's about the quality of argument. So I've just decided this is the most important because obviously because they had the more soldiers, better equipment, and it was inevitable they were going to win. So, for example, in summer 1918, the US could provide over 1 million new soldiers, and by October 1918, they used 1.2 million soldiers in the offensive on the Nuremberg line. This meant that increased Allied numbers was important to them winning the war because they would massively outnumber the tired Central Powers. This is shown in the resistance to the spring offensive. The Allies could count on British, French, Anzac, Indian, and fresh US soldiers to hold off the German army. The German army could not afford to lose soldiers as they had a limited amount of young fighters left. Also, during the victory of the Hindenburg Line, the Allies overwhelmed the Germans with numbers, as shown by the US victory at Meuse-Argonne. So, furthermore, the new invention of the tank. So now then we're going into tanks. Obviously, they've got more industry, more ingenuity. The tanks help to open up the battlefield as well and explain to win. Okay, so next paragraph then. Finally, you're going to look at the last paragraph, which is the Ludendorff offensive. So you can use the writing frame there. Again, pause me, give an idea, and then you can try and self-assess afterwards. Okay, got some ideas? So here's the final paragraph then. So finally, the Ludendorff offensive was also somewhat an important cause of Allies winning the war because it exhausted Germany of its best men and resources. So evidence is obviously they used their stormtroopers and they lost 500,000 men. They couldn't replace them. And so they were very, very weak by the 8th of August when the Anzac attack took place. 17,000 German soldiers surrendered. They were weaker. They were less resilient soldiers. They weren't as good. So from this day, obviously the German army was on the retreat and this was suffering. Then furthermore, Ludendorff offensive was somewhat important as the crisis of the offensive led to the Allies reorganizing and placing Foch in charge of the German, the whole Allied army. So apologies. This led to better overall leadership and joined up defending and attacking. This made the Allies even stronger to have this coordinated leadership. Okay, and finally, you then need to conclude. So then obviously naval blockade, you need to respond to the question, was naval blockade important? Okay, yes, it was important. Compare to other factors and then give your overall view. So yes, it was important. However, the significant moments of the German protests were in October, November 1918 after significant defeats on the Western Front had already taken place. So yes, it was important, but the Allied success had already happened that had sort of overwhelmed Germany, and then you can just give your overall view. In this case, that they had so many strengths, they were bound to win. Well, wow, that was a bit of a mission writing a 16 marker. Hopefully, you had fun doing it, and you feel like more successful in getting your arguments across and explaining the impact of your examples. So, obviously, there's loads more videos like that, and do have a look out for them. And obviously, keep working through your revision guides. If you don't have my revision guide, then obviously look at the links beneath and get my revision guide for loads and loads more videos. Okay, see you again soon. Bye bye for now.